Coming up on tonight's show, part 2 of the American Embassy's Women's Empowerment Speaker Series. The fall of the Kina, we take an in-depth look at the depreciation of the local currency.
It's like a tap. The tap has been turned down, so the water isn't coming into the sink so fast, but the drain is open and the water is flowing out. So.
Good evening, viewers. I'm Leanne Gerari. Welcome to the program. Last week, the U.S. Embassy in Port Moresby invited yet another American businesswoman to speak in their Women's Empowerment Speaker Series. The series is an initiative by the U.S. government to empower women in developing countries through workshops and clinics led by American professionals. Margaret Fripp, a social entrepreneur and mentor, spoke during a week-long speaker series in which she engaged with local female entrepreneurs and students in workshops and clinics. As part of their Women's Empowerment Speaker Series, the U.S. Embassy hosted U.S. award-winning social entrepreneur Margaret Fripp last week to speak to women business owners and raise awareness of women's critical role in Papua New Guinea's economic development. Ms. Fripp led marketing workshops for female SME owners as well as confidence-building workshops for informal female micro-entrepreneurs.
From a good business idea to a great product, there is competition for everyone. Some of you may have access to internet and can go Google. If you have a great idea where you're doing a product or a service, go Google, figure out who else is doing what you're doing and what ideas they have. How are they doing? One of the most important things for you to figure out how you stand out from your competition, how you differentiate yourself, is by research. Right? So know your competition. Know who are the people that are doing kind of the work you're doing, and you figure out how you do it differently and what makes you unique.
The workshops were well attended by women from the private and public sectors, women entrepreneurs, as well as upcoming businesswomen. The International Information Program's Speaker Program, sponsored by the U.S. Department of State, allows American experts to engage with foreign audiences around the world through lectures, workshops, and seminars on U.S. policies, society, and culture. The Speaker Program previously hosted American businesswoman and mentor Samira Cook Gaines, who was the inaugural speaker of the series.
Papua New Guinea, I've been here 24 hours maybe. But the people have been very welcoming. I've met very impressive businesswomen. So I'm a little bit surprised because I've never been to this part of the world and I didn't realize how strong that the businesswomen are here. It makes me think that the country has a really positive future.
Margaret Fripp is the founder and president of Empowered Women International, an organization that gives a voice and creates entrepreneurial opportunities to immigrant, refugee, and other marginalized women. With 19 years' experience to her name, she spoke to the attendees at the workshops about the importance of pursuing one's passion and becoming an agent for social change through partnerships. She also demonstrated to the micro-entrepreneurs how to grow their businesses from the informal to the formal sector. Marga also traveled to national universities, Pacific Adventist and Divine Word University, and spoke to youth leaders about becoming agents of change for social change in the country. After the break, Dennis Herrera with a report on the depreciation of the Kina. Welcome back to the program. PNG's currency, the Kina, has risen and fallen due to varied motives since independence. Successive governments, as well as the central bank, have had their own ways of dealing with the performance of the local currency. The Kina is depreciating at present, and there are questions on what the causes of it are and how long it will sustain for. While it may be a disadvantage for many, it could also be a blessing in disguise for some. Dennis Herrera with this report.
During the peak period of the Panguna mine, it was reported that the Kina was actually stronger than the US dollar. It provided over 45% of Papua New Guinea's national export revenue and was incredibly important to the economy. However, things took a turn. The Kina fell following the Bougainville crisis in 1988. Fast forward to today, it might be apparent that history is repeating itself, not because of another crisis, but because of the slowing down of the multi-billion Kina LNG project. The Kina has been falling ever since July this year, but the media has been very vocal about the sharp fall of the Kina, particularly after an article which made front page in the national newspaper in early October.
But we also know that there are some...
In the article, Executive Director for the Institute of National Affairs, Paul Barker, forecasted that the Kina would continue to weaken for at least another 8 months, affecting the government, businesses and individuals.
Until the middle of this year, the Kina was really appreciating. So it was fairly, steadily and at some stages rising fairly rapidly. So, as I said, in 2012, that strengthening of the Kina actually helped reduce the inflation rate because it made imports cheaper, and we know that imported goods and services form a significant portion of the household expenditure. So, and also, of course, of businesses as well. So that was 2 years of appreciation of the currency. Now we've had about sort of the last 4 or 5 months, we've seen it slipping back quite a bit as a result of the low commodity prices now. Across the board, most commodity prices of products that PNG is exporting, oil, copper, agricultural products and so on, most of them have come down, and therefore the inflow from the exporting of those products is much less than it was, say, last year or the year before.
Despite the hype that the local tabloids have created over the depreciation of the Kina, the phenomenon has been there for quite some time now. Ever since July this year, the value of the Kina has been falling and falling. Bank of Papua New Guinea Governor Loy Bakani has said that the fall of the Kina was predicted way before the actual fall started, and that there are mechanisms in place to maneuver through the time of the Kina depreciating.
There's a few things here. In terms of the stance, in terms of the interest rate, what you call a Kina facility rate, we've been maintaining at 6%, 6.25%. Now, operationally, what we do in the market is different. We've tightened up on liquidity, like one of the measures that we did on 7th of October was to diffuse about 190 million more liquidity from the banks. That's a lot of money for the banks. And now at the moment, this is through a facility we call a cash reserve requirement. And at the moment, it's about 8% of their total liquid assets. So this is how much money we drain out, and it's a cost to the banks because that money, they cannot use it to make money for them or make any profits for them. So it's for the purpose of managing monetary policy, managing the liquidity here. And then secondly, also, we've sold more. We try to sell more central bank bills to help diffuse the liquidity. It's a market at force. So through monetary policy, we don't want to tighten to increase interest rates because if we don't have reserves, if we don't have any other means of supporting the Kina, then obviously we'll have to tighten interest rates. So we're using other means rather than tightening monetary policy.
The construction phase of the LNG project was a short phenomenon. During this period, there was literally a spike in the economy. Charts indicate that the Kina is dropping back to the level that it was at about 2 to 3 years ago, just before the construction phase of the LNG project. ANZ economist Daniel Wilson told online publication Business Advantage PNG that the current account deficit has been recently revised up from 2.7 billion Kina to just under 7 billion Kina. Wilson believes this is the fundamental driving force behind the depreciation. The online publication states that typically, a weaker Kina makes imports more expensive, but can also make the country's exports more price competitive. However, it also increases the cost of essential imported inputs for local manufacturers. Some predicted the slide of the Kina while others simply saw signs of a weaker Kina.
Look, I wouldn't say that we actually predicted the fall of it, but I mean, there were signs early on that it was going to come down. I think the central bank, Bank of Papua New Guinea, have spent over $1 billion out of their foreign reserves and keeping support of the Kina over the last 12 months. And as the money that we spent on the LNG and as that's stopped now in the development phase, we've had the Kina's been under pressure, and as a result, it's come off. But I believe that as soon as the next year comes around and as we start getting those reserves the revenue flows coming in, the Kina will come back.
A few retail companies shared their views last week on the depreciation of the Kina with regards to their business operations.
A budget is due in 2 weeks' time.
Chief Executive Officer for City Pharmacy Limited, Ravi Singh, shared his views on behalf of the organization, which owns Stop and Shop, Hardware House, Bond Cafe and other retail outlets.
I think the impact of a depreciating Kina is that imports become more expensive and we have to shell out more Kina for the same thing that we are buying from either America or from Australia. It is making imports dearer, but companies like CPL are trying to deliver the same prices or the best value to the consumer. So what it means is that though the imports are becoming dearer for us, we are using our forward covers as well as other fund hedge options that we have got to deliver the products and sell the products at the same price. So we are maintaining the same prices that we were selling the products at before the Kina started depreciating.
All of our products are imported, so you know, down the line with our products we're increasing our prices by 20% to cover costs. There's a lot of products that we have which are low margin, which we'll lose money if we don't increase the prices. So that's unfortunately something that we're going to have to do. We're building up towards our back to school period next year, so yeah, we've bought our products early, so we've beaten that that price hike. But yeah, down the line we're going to have to increase prices there.
However, there might actually be some good news behind all of this. Can exporters benefit from this depreciation? Might this be a blessing in disguise?
On the other hand, farmers have who are exporting in prices that are denominated in US dollars, which is all the coffee, cocoa, oil palm, etc. They're actually seeing some benefit, and some tourist operators will also see some benefit, and some manufacturers who are using local ingredients and not too many imported components will also be finding themselves to be a bit more competitive, and some advantages.
And also I'd like to take this opportunity to request for exporters, because the lower Kina should be good for them. They should now be increasing their production to take advantage of the Kina, lower Kina. Because if you miss it now, and if foreign exchange things turn around, you will be even worse off. So exporters, not everybody will lose off, but I think it will benefit the exporters if they take advantage of it and start to increase the production.
Don't forget to join the conversation regarding the depreciation of the Kina on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned. When we return, more on the depreciating Kina. Welcome back. For many years, the resource sector has been a key driver for PNG's economy. The question of whether we are being too reliant on the resource sector comes about. This is indicated with the depreciating Kina, which is largely believed to be the result of the slowing down of the PNG LNG project.
According to the Bank of Papua New Guinea, PNG has a floating exchange rate regime where the supply of and demand for foreign currency in the market determines the Kina exchange rate. As such, higher foreign exchange inflows from export proceeds, foreign investment, taxes, and dividend and foreign donor funding would cause the Kina exchange rate to appreciate or rise. Similarly, higher foreign exchange outflows for import payments, repayment of foreign loans, dividends, and other overseas remittances would cause the Kina exchange rate to depreciate or fall. The Kina exchange rate also reflects developments in the currencies of PNG's major trading partners. As the US economy improves now, the US dollar is recovering, adding to the depreciation of the Kina. On the same token, if the Australian dollar appreciates against the US dollar as a result of improvements in Australia's economy, the Kina will depreciate accordingly. Now, the common questions that arise are, will the LNG production phase strengthen the Kina again? How long will this devaluation of the Kina sustain for?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, we are back to where we were, but I believe that we are pre-LNG when all that money were coming in. But look, the Kina is probably at around those stages where they said it would be. But look, we all believe that the Kina will appreciate as we get the flows coming back in. So let's see what happens over the next year or so.
Looking ahead into next year, there is some prospects for some commodity recovery in commodity prices. We see ADB in one of the reports this week also said, yeah, there's some light in the tunnel for commodities prices to go up. So that improves, and it will bring in foreign exchange.
It's really important that the Kina does not appreciate too much, and that's part of the purpose of having a sovereign wealth fund is to stop too much money flowing into and too much demand for the Kina and holding some of the earnings effectively offshore in overseas currencies and overseas investments.
The Bank of PNG reveals that the Kina has depreciated by 13% against the US dollar and 5% against the Australian dollar between December 2012 and end of October 2013. Following measures undertaken by the Bank of PNG in consultation with the commercial banks, the Kina exchange rate has stabilized at around 0.4140 US dollars for about 4 weeks and is now at 0.4130 US dollars. There have been concerns raised about a lot of focus being based on the resource sector in the country.
You cannot rely on the mineral sector all the time. We have to start to diversify the economy and focus on non-mineral, especially agriculture, and it's positive. It's very good news that the government is now looking at tourism also in support of agriculture sector to sustain the growth in the economy into the future.
The fall of the Kina after the construction phase of the PNG LNG project and the fall in commodity prices makes way for other sectors to be utilized to sustain the Kina as well as the overall economy. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill stated earlier this year about the government's plans to set up economic hubs in the country.
Recently, I outlined the government's plan to create a number of economic hubs, adding to our existing major centres of Port Moresby and Lae, together with Mount Hagen. In addition, we have identified Kokopo as the major tourism hub.
Although the government has promoted steady economic growth and sustained inflation rate during the time of the depreciating Kina, there are still concerns raised by the public on the prices of goods and services such as store goods, transport and fuel. Bank of PNG Governor Loy Bakani stated in a media release last week that the depreciation of the Kina is due to higher demand for foreign currencies to meet payments for import of goods, services and dividends, as well as import demand for the Christmas festive season.
I think firstly, the thing is that despite the fact that Kina is depreciating, we are holding our prices. So customers can come to our stores and celebrate Christmas like they have always celebrated. Apart from that, we are also giving a lot of value-added prices to our consumers. So you spend 200 Kina in any of our stores and you are able to get electronic appliances at a very, very reasonable price.
Mr. Bakani said this demand is coming mainly from manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers and services sectors and for consumer and capital imports. Some of this demand is generated by private sector, ongoing construction of the LNG project, increase in lending by the commercial banks and government expenditures. Another concern that the depreciating Kina brings about is investor confidence.
As I said, it's probably too early yet to see if there's going to be any real negative, but all the local companies like Credit Corp and CPL, etc., Bank South Pacific, they earn their money in Kina here, so they're not being, whilst the value is falling, they're still earning their money in the value here, so they're not going overseas buying assets over there.
The depreciating Kina has prompted one main question, and the question is whether we are becoming too reliant on the resource sector. As the country moves on into the future, the government, the private sector and ordinary Papua New Guineans will have to strive into the future in weathering the storm at these challenging times for the Kina. How long will this go on for? Only time will tell.
So it's like a tap. The tap has been turned down, so the water isn't coming into the sink so fast, but the drain is open and the water is flowing out. So one needs to sort of, before the drain was going down slower and the tap was on fast and it was filling up, the foreign exchange reserves were filling up, the demand for Kina was high and the Kina was rising. Now it's sort of going the other way.
And that's all we have for you tonight. If you would like to watch this episode or any of our previous episodes again, visit www.mtv.com.pg and go to our Business PNG page. Also, remember to send us your feedback via Facebook, Twitter, or email. Until next week, I'm Leon Jarari. Have a pleasant evening.